Hello, everyone.
How are you, Frank?
I'd like to call the Committee on Governance meeting to order. Action 1, Item 1A is the approval of the minutes of the October 3rd, 2022 Committee on Governance meeting. I move the approval of Action Item 1A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Motion is passed.
And are there any abstentions, or you,
Is anybody, I'm
because the
sorry.
students were here, if you want to.
I'm being a little glib. I apologize.
I'll abstain.
You'll
I'm going
abstain.
to abstain because I wasn't here either. I don't get the last one.
Fair enough. Okay, you got the.
Yep.
We will now address action item 1B, the policy calendar. Policy item B1 is a resolution to approve the new gender-based violence and workplace policy, amending and restating the domestic violence and the workplace policy adopted in 2013. Senior Vice Chancellor and General Counsel Derek Davis will present the item. Vice Chancellor for Human Resources is here as well to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair Sunshine. This is an important policy. We've always had a domestic violence policy at the university, but led by Kathy Hochul, our current governor, there was an impetus at the state level to address, on a broader level, gender violence in the workplace as it bears upon not only the victims of domestic violence generally, but those who might be witnesses and those who might be impacted by an experience like this. So the policy, in essence, expands the rights and the privileges and the sensitivities we as an institution and as public agencies need to have with respect to individuals as they cope with and navigate these experiences. And so in conjunction with my colleague, Dorian Gloria, we were presented with a model policy by the state, as all the public agencies and public instrumentalities are presented, and we compared that to our own policy and amended it. And it basically assigns responsibility between our respective offices to afford individuals who've been caught up in this most unfortunate situation not only time to heal, but time to address their challenge as they might otherwise address it through the legal system or otherwise. So I think it's, you'll note in the policy itself, there's no fundamental requirement for training other than the individuals who have to administer the program. But it's a broader policy that is more sensitive to the rights of individuals who are impacted by domestic violence. But Dorian, I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
No, I think that covers it. It's going to be effective in January, and it replaces one of our earlier policies.
That is correct. We submitted our draft to the state office of, I forget the actual name, of OPDV or something like that. And they're going to get us their comments back by November 23rd. We were timely. And then all state agencies and public instrumentalities are required to adopt such a policy by January 1. We have no reason to believe, based on the draft that is before you, that it would not be acceptable. Thank you, Chair Sunshine. That's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions, though.
Any other questions?
Hi, Victoria Chevalier, Executive Committee, University Faculty Senate, alternate for Karen Coughlin. So first and foremost, was there any faculty consultation on the
policy? Did we have faculty input?
I'm sorry.
Did we have, I don't know that we had any direct faculty input, but there's still opportunities for that. We have time to have input.
We would strongly
Certainly,
recommend.
certainly. Absolutely.
And then a couple of consistency issues with the document itself.
Sure.
So on the fifth unnumbered page of the resolution, 2.1, the definition of workplace. For the purposes of this policy, any permanent or temporary location where an employee performs any work-related duty in the course of employment. So in the context of remote teaching, this includes the home. Yes, we
That's a very good question. I'm not so sure it does. I'm not so sure it does. I think that the statute, when this was promulgated by the state of New York, hybrid work was relatively new. This was coming about during COVID. So I don't know if the statute actually contemplates that, but I guess that's something we'd have to look into. But
Yes.
let's suffice it to say, though, that wherever domestic violence takes place, it's covered by the policy.
Okay. And I think the fault line of workplace is home and workplace at a CUNY institution is an important one to clarify and get into language. 4B1, just to piggyback on what you're saying, examples of situations where confidentiality of individuals' information cannot be maintained include supervisors, managers may be informed about a domestic violence incident that happens in the workplace, right? Or a report of domestic violence if it is necessary to protect the safety of the employee or the employee's coworkers. So, from a faculty or, a worker perspective, if a faculty member's department chair or dean or administrator, would they be informed about incidents that happen if the home is also defined as a workplace? So would a faculty member's dean or a worker, any worker's dean, supervisor, chair, be notified if the home is a workplace also? Would that happen?
Well, I want to defer a little bit to Dorian, but first and foremost, if there is let's say Title IX, sexual assault or workplace, domestic violence, broadly speaking, we have strict rules of confidentiality at the university, regardless of the place where the matter or the event occurred. And we have a duty by policy and state to protect the confidentiality of the person pending the investigation. It is, it's a unique question that you're asking as it relates to the place where it occurred. But if it's reported to internally to the university, we have strict rules as to how that information can be handled. But Dorian, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the classic example is if someone has an order of protection. Sorry. If someone...
I can hear you.
Okay, mine is not. If someone has an order of protection, for example, we wouldn't be able to keep this completely confidential because people would need to know in order to be able to help enforce that. So the confidentiality would remain wherever it possibly could. It would only be if for those reasons that we had to share the information. Does that help?
Yes. Yes.
You got any more questions?
Nope, not right now.
Her question begs another question, which is, this is a workplace policy. How does this involve domestic violence of an employee? And what kind of protections, if any, does this cover? I mean, obviously, this is a state-regulated operation, so putting that in context. But it begs the question about my individual situation outside of my workplace as a CUNY employee. So that'll be...
It's actually a much broader policy, and it's it's interesting. You could be a witness to domestic violence and have protection under this policy. We would have to afford you an opportunity for counseling, to participate in interviews, participate in investigations. This policy is really designed to expand the protections afforded to people who fall within the orbit of domestic violence. Because what I think the legislature and the governor have found, that it's not just the person who's been victimized, but the people who are familiar with the person, the people who may have witnessed the incident, who deserve similar protections and support from their employer. So, for example, to take advantage of the kind of, whether it's mental health support or medical support, they can't be penalized, even if they're a witness, to take time off to get counseling and to seek that advice. So it's a much broader policy. It in no way infringes upon or limits our Title IX reach for sexual assault or sexual harassment. In fact, it probably expands it. But it doesn't have the investigatory apparatus that our Title IX procedures do. Is that fair to say?
I think it summed it up, but it is interesting because it's called gender-based violence in the workplace, and yet it goes back and forth between domestic violence, violence in the workplace.
Right.
And I think, to Derek's point, to try to broaden it, because the truth is that those two things rarely exist without overlapping, one into the other.
Right.
Which brings me to the last, exactly there, where the overlap or the question about that fault line between the workplace and home, which we have to clarify further. In 9A2, accountability for employees who perpetrate acts of domestic or gender-based violence, A, CUNY hold accountable any employee who is found to have engaged in behaviors including but not limited to, and Roman in 2, committed an act of domestic or gender-based violence from or at the workplace, or from any location conducting state business, except for locations where employees are telecommuting. So does telecommuting include teaching remotely over Zoom again?
I think you've raised, quite frankly, we haven't looked at this. It raises a very interesting legal question, because anyone who's attended law school would recognize that there is an expectation of privacy that begins at the doorstep of your home. Likewise, anyone who's gone to law school and had a background in employment law understands that if your home is a workplace, there are certain consequences and rights which are relinquished by virtue of the fact that you're using part of your residence as a workplace environment. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think we've been presented with a situation where we've had a domestic case where we've had a worker, an employee, at least not that I'm aware of, their rights have been violated while they're in the conduct of their work in their home. And the question is, who would, I suppose it could be a relative, but I think it would be an interesting case. And I think we have to flesh that out. I'm certainly happy to consult the office to determine if that's a case of first impression, if they have already thought about that policy. This is a relatively new policy. It would be interesting to see how far the jurisdiction. The other thing we have to keep in mind is we're not a prosecutorial agency, and that's not the design of this policy. Dorian noted the notion of enforcing a protective order. That is something we have to seriously consider as a public instrumentality. We have a public safety department, which we're very proud of, and they would be charged, quite frankly, with working with the local police department and enforcing protective orders if it came to that. So thinking about that in terms of the home, we don't have that reach. We can't go beyond our own campus. So I think this is an interesting question. I'm happy to pursue it and get back to you.
Thank you.
And follow up.
We would love that. The purpose of my questions is simply to flag some inconsistencies.
I agree.
And to get to some clarity in the document. So we would love to, faculty, UFS, would love to work with you on that. Thank you.
I think the question of the whole notion of we are in a new world of remote work, and what that means, both from benefits where people work and live at home and conduct work for the university and for other institutions and conduct their lives as well. But thank you for your question.
Sure.
Anyone else? Okay, I move the approval of policy item B1. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item is passed unanimously. Policy item B2 is a resolution to amend Article 2, Policy 2.04 and 2.041 of the Manual of General Policy of the Board of Trustees regarding standing and special committees to replace the existing committees with the following committees and their descriptions and charters: Committee on Advancement and External Affairs, Committee on Audit and Compliance, Educational Policy, including a subcommittee on Research and Innovation, and a subcommittee on enrollment as needed by the chair, Facilities, Planning and Management, Finance and Administration, including a subcommittee on investments, subcommittee on diversity, inclusion, and minority women-owned business enterprises, and a subcommittee on technology planning as needed by the chair, subcommittee on student life, and a committee on governance, as well as revising the structure of the committees, including faculty and student representation and the quorum and voting requirements. The secretary and general counsel to the board are available to answer any questions.
I just want to note that there was a revised resolution sent last week, so hopefully people took note of that it went out on Thursday with the new agenda. So we actually got feedback from from faculty last week at the technology planning meeting and from students and the concerns that you guys had previously expressed about making sure that the faculty and students were explicitly mentioned rather than implicitly mentioned. And so every charter has been revised, and the resolution reflects that. It says that a student faculty member shall be invited to participate in accordance with the Board of Trustees Manual of General Policy 2.041, the committee structure. And there's a new resolved paragraph in the resolution that also amends 2.041 to clean that one up, and it hasn't been looked at in about 20 years. And so I think that's just to address, I think what you guys might
Stole my thunder, Gail.
There you go. All good. So, and then the other part of the charter that was addressed was to clean up the language on the quorum, and that's also mentioned in policy 2.041. So you can, it's posted, John, probably it's on your onboard, so if you want to take a look at that, the reso, but it's all there now.
It already went out to,
It went out last week.
it went out, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I move the.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I have a question. It's more clarification. It says that on the composition of the committees, that there shall be no more than 5 members, and all of them shall be appointed by the chairperson of the board.
Right, so that would be trustee members.
Yes.
That's the trustees who are appointed by the governor and the mayor, and then approved by, and then it separately says a student faculty member shall be invited. So that's in addition to the 5.
So that's now 7.
Could be, in some cases. Some committees only have 4, but it's up to 5.
Okay. All right.
Would, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Would you indulge me and tell
Sure.
me and share with us what the faculty representation is on the committees? Because since I don't have the
Okay, so the policy,
Thank you.
yes, happy to read to you, I have it here, policy 2.041, and this existed already, right? This was already in the Manual of General Policy, it's been there since, I don't know, 1990, I think was the last time. I was going to say the year of the flood, but it was only 1990. Okay, so the members of the standing committees of the board and the chairperson and vice chairperson of each subcommittee shall be designated by the chairperson of the board. Each trustee appointed to a committee of the board shall be entitled to vote on the matters before the committee. In addition, each year, the chairperson of the board shall appoint 1 faculty member after consultation with the chairperson of the University Faculty Senate and 1 City University student after consultation with the chairperson of the University Student Senate to sit with and serve as members of each of the now 7 standing committees and 5 subcommittees. So when the chairperson of the Faculty Senate or chairperson of the University Student Senate is appointed to a standing committee, such chairperson shall constitute the respective faculty or student member of the committee. Each committee member shall individually and without power of substitution or delegation during the term of his or her appointment be entitled to vote on the matters before the committee. In addition, the chairperson of the board may appoint 1 alternate faculty member after consultation with the chairperson of the University Faculty Senate and 1 alternate City University student after consultation with the chairperson of the University Student Senate to sit with and serve as members of each of the standing committees in the absence of the designated faculty or student member respectively, and accordingly be entitled to vote and be counted for purposes of quorum in any vote of such committee. In the event the faculty or student member of a committee resigns or is otherwise unable to serve, the alternate faculty or student member respectively shall not automatically succeed to the position of faculty or student member. Students must satisfy the board's eligibility guidelines of the University Student Senate to be appointed and to continue to serve as member or alternate member of the board committee.
Thank
So I
you.
think that,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank
okay.
you so much.
Not a problem, happy to.
I say, I for one, I mean, this whole process was, I'm very proud of the board, the way all this happened. I mean, these committees were structured under, Mayor LaGuardia maybe, before that, or Stuyvesant. And largely through the legwork of Derek Davis and Gail, we came very far, very fast. And there are details, you're pointing out some things, but overall, this has been a somewhat seamless process, and I feel very good about it. So, any other discussion before we take a vote? Okay, I move the approval of policy item B1. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. For the newer members of this committee, belated welcome. It's a very new committee, though, so we're sort of feeling our way, but, there wasn't a lot on the agenda here, but we moved pretty quickly. But there is a whole lot more we're going to be doing in the future, I think. I know. So, with that, move to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Great meets next.
4:30.